Born a Killer, a crime fiction novella series by Nicholas Sawyer. September 4th, 2016, Bend, Oregon. Emily had stayed out late. She had a biochemistry test coming up in the morning, and the campus library always stayed open late until 10 p.m. every night. She had been a student at Oregon State University Cascades for the last year. Emily was majoring in biochemistry and molecular biology. Her parents had been so proud when she received her acceptance letter. She had been born and raised in Bend, Oregon, and had always wanted to stay close to her parents, and it had worked out for her to go to college while being able to also go home. It was nearly 10:15 p.m. Emily had just wrapped up, and the librarian always let her stay at least 15 to 20 minutes after the library closed. Though her parents lived in Bend, she had opted to live on campus and stay home on the weekends. Emily was near her dorm when she felt something strange. The light pole ahead of her began to go in and out and was becoming dim. She stopped and started to look around. Her breathing was sparse and controlled as he watched the girl look around. She couldn't see him, and he was well hidden, watching her from afar and waiting for the right moment. The sensation he was feeling was a sort of turn-on. She was quite beautiful, after all, and was just what he needed. She was alone and not far from her dorm room. When she started walking again, he silently followed her. As Emily neared the door, she felt like someone was watching her from afar or even following her. Somehow, she could hear the pattered footsteps coming behind her. Emily again brushed it off as nothing, and then stopped to punch in the code to the side door that would lead up to the second floor of the dormitory. As she opened the door, she was grabbed from behind and thrown into the wall. He cupped a gloved hand over her mouth and prevented her from trying to scream. He wore a mask and saw a red glow from above. It was the stairwell security camera. If someone was watching, he only had a few minutes before campus police might be alerted. Emily managed to free a hand and punch him in the face. Anger brewed inside him, and he grabbed Emily and slammed her into the wall, knocking her out. He looked around quickly and grabbed her up and rushed off into the darkness. There was a small trail of blood that he failed to notice. It would later be something that would help the police. His face had been covered, so there'd be no way to ID the kidnapper at all. After carrying her body through the bushes, he made his way to the parking lot, where he parked his van. He quickly opened the rear door and tossed Emily inside. "Wait, where are you taking me?" she asked. Tears were streaming down her face, and the side of her head was covered in blood from where he had smacked her against the wall. "Shut up," he smiled, and hit her in the back of the head, throwing her into the van. He continued grinning and hopped into the back of the van and closed the door behind him. After knocking her out again, he zip-tied and gagged her. Moments later, he put a key into the ignition and took off down the road. No one had suspected a thing, and no one would know that Emily had been abducted for nearly 2 days. After driving almost an hour, the van stopped. Emily had been out cold and awoke to the van stopping. She looked up and saw her kidnapper, and he was staring back at her, giving her a tense and disturbing smile. He climbed into the back of the van and grabbed her by the hair. She tried to scream, but the gag was still bound tightly around her mouth. Once he dragged her out of the back of the van, he threw her onto the ground and then picked her up and started to drag her across the ground again. Emily kicked and fought, but couldn't get free from the mystery figure who had kidnapped her. She looked around to her surroundings, and at first she didn't recognize anything noticeable. Then she looked up and recognized the bridge in front of her, and she realized that she was in Shelvin Park. It was really a good park, located on the edge of the city. "I'm glad you recognize where we are," said the man. Emily's eyes were still wet with tears, and she was filled with fear. "You're not going to leave me here," he said, laughing, and finally stopped dragging her. He leaned over her and pulled the gag down. Emily began to scream for help. "Scream all you want, bitch. No one is coming to help you," he said. She continued to crowd for help and try to get free of the restraints. "Like I said before, we're on the edge of the city, and no one is here besides us." Emily tried to get up, but as she did, he hit her across the face, and she fell to the ground again. She looked up at the man, and he finally removed the mask he'd been wearing to cover his face. "No, I know you," she said. Emily trembled even more in fear, knowing who her attacker was. "I know how could it be little old me," he said. Smiling, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. "Please." "No," Emily screamed. "Don't worry. I'm not going to kill you just yet." He lunged on top of her, stabbing her multiple times in the chest, before getting off of her and screaming into the air with rage. His uncontrollable laughter then filled the air with his screaming. He looked down at his victim. Emily writhed after being stabbed. "Please, just let me go." Emily was in pain and could feel the blood coming from the wounds on her chest. He grabbed her and proceeded to carry her to the bridge. "Wait. No, please, I'm begging you," she cried out. "Time for a swim," he said. He thrust her body over the side of the bridge and watched as it made a loud splash and floated down the river towards a second walkway under the bridge only a few yards away. After watching the body disappear onto the bridge and down the river, he got back into his van and disappeared down the road.